All right, so tonight we're looking at Job chapter 1, verses 6 through 12. Job chapter 1, verses 6 through 12. And when I started in this, I thought I may have overreached a little bit, because if you look at your notes, virtually the whole first page is just verse 6. All right, so let's read over these 7 verses, and then we'll come back and take a closer look. Now, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" And then Satan answered the Lord and said, "From roaming around on the earth and walking around on it." The Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? For there is no one like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, fearing God and turning away from evil." And then Satan answered the Lord, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge about him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But put forth your hand now and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Behold, all that he has is in your power. Only do not put forth your hand on him." So Satan departed from the presence of the Lord. All right. Well, it would be an interesting thing if we could hear that, at some point God is there talking, and God says to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Roger?" And Satan says, "Ooh, yeah." All right, let's take a look at verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons, S-O-N-S, sons of God, came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. A day when the sons of God came to present themselves. Well, we are to understand that the term sons of God here refers to angels. Angels, too, are created beings. So what exactly do you call them? The created beings of God? Well, that doesn't cover it, because there's a lot of those. So they're referred to as the sons of God. They are mentioned again in chapter 38, verse 7. As God is recounting to Job creation, they are shouting for joy at creation. And they are the secret counsel of God in chapter 15, verse 8. So throughout the book, the presence of these celestial beings is presupposed. They take it for granted that these celestial beings are there. The secret counsel of God. 2, what's the purpose? The purpose of this gathering of angels is likely similar to what we find in Zechariah 6. In Zechariah 6, the prophet is being shown heaven by an angelic guide, and he is shown 4 angels in 4 chariots. And he is told that these are the 4 spirits of heaven who patrol the earth and then return to stand before the Lord and report. It was a common thing in those days for a king who held a vast amount of territory to have messengers or ambassadors go on important errands throughout the different provinces of the empire, and then return to give an account of what they had observed and of the general state of the kingdom. You see the same imagery in 1 Kings chapter 22, verses 19 through 23, where, again, the heavenly council is gathered, and they are gathered around God who is sitting on his throne. And God asks, who will go? Go is his messenger, the boy running his task. Who will go and influence King Ahab? So you have this picture of God on his throne and his secret council of angels around him, and they have a job. They go throughout creation, they see how things are going, and they report back to God. So they have gathered together in this council, a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. They have reports to make. In reading this, I was a little disheartened. I was hoping that there was no homework in heaven, but evidently there is. So they're there and they're reporting, and then that guy shows up. Satan shows up. It seems that Satan was not invited to the meeting, and why would he be? But came of his own accord. So let's unpack this fellow for a second. The Hebrew language, in the Hebrew language, the word here for Satan literally means the adversary. The adversary. If you're in court, the attorney on the other side of the aisle is your adversary. The Greek translation calls him the devil, which carries the meaning of an accuser, one who accuses you. In the Latin Bible, as well as the Middle Eastern, Chaldee, and Syriac language translations, there in the Middle East, the word is translated also Satan. And it's interesting to note, I remember as a kid wondering why the leap automatically that the serpent in the garden was Satan. Well, as it happens, Arabic speakers use the word in reference to particularly vile and ugly snakes. And that's been going on for a long time. In part of ancient Arabic. A vile and ugly snake is Satan. So who is this fellow that Shakespeare says is truly a gentleman? Well, he's an adversary. He's an accuser. He is the devil. He is a snake. And regardless of the language, the word seems to carry with it the imagery of one who lies in wait to ambush you, to strike you, to accuse you, to hit you from behind, your adversary. In common language, it came to be used to refer to an accuser, someone in opposition, someone who stands in your way. Early on, the word kind of assumed the status of a proper name. Satan was, in the beginning, not so much a name as just what he did. He was the accuser. He was the adversary. It's what he does. But it became a common name, very much in the same way that in the English language, the word carpenter becomes a name. Karen and Richard Carpenter, but they didn't work with saws or 2x4s. How many people do you know named Smith? But very few of them own an anvil. They do not do the work of a smith. But once upon a time, one of their ancestors did, and that's just kind of how language works. There was a family that lived up the street from us named Tarbox. I've never understood what, I'm sure it's a German derivative of some kind. Couldn't imagine what job that must have been. So Satan moves from what that particular angel did to becoming a proper name. Well, here the name is applied to the great enemy of God and the great enemy of mankind, the malignant spirit who seduces people to evil, who accuses them before God. And his name was already pretty well locked in, even as early and old as the book of Job is, and you see it again a lot in the New Testament, but even in the Old Testament, in Zechariah chapter 3, verses 1 and 2, and the prophet says, he showed me Joshua the priest standing before the angel of the Lord and Satan. Fellow had been around for a long time. Verse 7. The Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" Now remember, he had sent the angels out, these sons of God. He had sent them out to specific places in the kingdom of God to be able to view it, see it, report back on it. He didn't send Satan, and so when Satan shows up, God asked him, "Where did you come from? What the cat dragon?" Satan wasn't assigned a duty, and he had no business at the council. But there's an implication as he comes that shows Satan's ongoing submission to God as he is coming to report. When Satan was cast out of heaven and thrown down to the earth, as the New Testament tells us, surely he would have wanted to survey his new home. So he replies to the Lord that he's been walking around the earth. The Hebrew phrase for walking around literally suggests that he was circumnavigating the globe. He was spying it out. Zechariah 4:10 uses that same word to apply to the eyes of the Lord, which range from to and fro throughout the earth. Being able to see everything all around the earth all at once. And so he surveys all the things as one whose eye passes rapidly from object to object. The same phrase occurs in the Old Testament in 2 Chronicles 16:9 and in Jeremiah 5:1, where it's implied to the action of a man running rapidly through the streets of a city, covering the entire length and breadth of a city all at once. Where have you come from? I have been to the earth, roaming around on the earth, walking around on it. And so then God asked him, basically as a report, "Have you considered my servant Job? For there is no one like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, fearing God and turning away from evil. Have you considered my servant Job?" The Lord finds Job to be remarkable. And so surely Satan would have noticed him. Somebody as remarkable and amazing and wonderful as he is. And notice that God calls Job my servant, placing him in the same company with Moses, with David, with Caleb, with the prophets. And he says that there's no one like him in all the earth, which makes him sound even a little like Noah. As God looks around the earth, he's trying to find one righteous man, and there's Noah. And here's Job. And he gives Satan Job's credentials, the same credentials that we saw in verse 1. There is just no one like him on the earth, blameless and upright, fearing God and turning away from evil. So as you've been wandering the earth, Satan, did you notice my man Job? Oh, isn't he something? He's so special. Well, in verses 9 through 11, Satan says, "Oh yes, I did notice him. But he answered the Lord and asked, does Job fear God for nothing? He ignores the fact that Job is blameless and upright, turning away from evil, and focuses instead on Job's motive for fearing God. What's Job's motive? Why does he revere you, worship you, fear you? And he strikes at the central question then is, why do we worship? Do we worship out of a profit motive, hoping to get some favor from God? Is that why we worship? Or do we worship when we're suffering solely to press God to intervene on our behalf and relieve our pain? Is that why we worship? Or do we worship God purely because God is worthy of our worship? From time to time, I'm struck. I implied this last Sunday when Satan took a hold of my computer just as I was getting up to preach. That was the doggonedest thing. I had already got it all set and ready to go, just like I do every Sunday. And when I got up there, I opened the top of it, and every program I had came on all at once, including the music programs. So, and they're all playing at the same time. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? Stop. And it just, I remember years and years and years ago, before such a thing as wireless mics and so forth, as we were just beginning to experiment with them. You know, the number one problem that churches had in those days, back in the early 90s with wireless mics, is that you would pick up all of the radio traffic from the police and the fire department. And so you're there in the middle of the sermon, and all of a sudden you're getting a call for a robbery, and you're thinking, well, should we go help? What should we do? Pray a lot. Yep. Thank you, Bobby. And so, I early on, I said, it's just Satan just messing with everything. And I mentioned the rather silly little movie that's sort of Monty Python-esque called Time Bandits. It's a little like the story of Job, where God is sort of testing things. And God used little created creatures to do work for him in creation, is the storyline. And they were small people, so they would do, underbrush and grass and so forth during creation. But they got the idea that God had a map of all the time portals in creation, and they could move in and out of time and steal things. And so their own little version of Satan rebelling against God. And so they're doing that, and they go to ancient Greece, and Sean Connery is the king. And so they go there, but all the while they realize that Satan is tracking them, because Satan too wants the map. And so the camera keeps going back and forth from these miniature little thieves to Satan in the castle of infinite darkness. And there's a scene where one of the demons says, Satan, I want to bring you up to date on things that are going on among people. And Satan says, well, what is it? He's irritated. You're bothering me. He says, well, sir, you need to know about computers. And I'm going, yes! And he says, computers? What are computers? And so he's showing them how computers work and so forth. And Satan says, this is wonderful. While God's out there worrying about butterflies, we'll take control of these things. I'm going, yes, that's exactly what happened. So, anyhow, Satan. So there I was. Sorry?
I don't think you're very far from home.
No, I don't either. I think he's right in the midst of all of that. I'm often interested in how Hollywood can come so close to the gospel. And one of the places where Hollywood got really close to the gospel, it was really interesting. I almost got in an argument with a guy, another pastor, who was very, 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 very anti-Disney. Because in the 1990s Disney movie, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, the gypsy girl Esmeralda is there in the cathedral, and she has a prayer. And as she's praying on behalf of others, not for herself, everyone else around her is praying for themselves. Make me rich. Send me a new husband. Send me a new wife. And it was always for their personal gain. What can I get from God? And that's exactly what Satan is asking here. Is profit the real motive behind why we go to church? Are we negotiating with God? If I go to church and I'm a good person, then God, you've got to bless me, right? You've got to give me what I want. And there are so many people who function that way. Some of them do it intentionally. They have this idea that it's all about checks and balances and balancing the scales. If I do this and this and this, then surely God must do this for me. That's how it works, right? Because God is just. And so if I check all the boxes, then God will bless me, or do we worship God purely because God is worthy of our worship? So Satan draws the battle lines. And he's suggesting that the only reason that Job is blameless and upright, fearing God, turning away from evil, is because God's been good to him. Really, really, really good to him. Go back to the first couple of verses. How many oxen, how many female donkeys and camels and so forth? He was a very, very, very wealthy man. 10 children, 7 sons, perfect. And he says, well, that's the only reason that he worships you, right? This is Satan's argument. You place a hedge around him, a hedge of protection. And it's the kind of, the word there suggests a very, very thorny hedge that just you can't get through. It's impenetrable. Evil cannot get to him. He can't be harmed. His family is protected. He's protected. You've placed this hedge of protection around him, and you've blessed his work. You've blessed the work of his hands, and you've made him really, really, really rich. And so Satan is suggesting, under those circumstances, anyone would worship you. Anyone would be grateful to you. Anyone would give you praise and honor and glory for the way that you have just lifted them up and made them so wealthy and powerful and safe. And so Satan's suggesting that a profit motive is the singular reason for Job's devotion for God. Well, here's the thing about Satan. He never tells a straight-up lie, does he? Remember the Garden of Eden, the conversation with Eve? Did God really say that you would die if you ate this?
He's like a lawyer.
He is like a lawyer. That's why he's called the adversary. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 9 and 10. Verse 9 gets used in a lot of good sermons on tithing. Honor the Lord with your wealth. Honor the Lord with your wealth, and from the first of your produce. So your barns, says verse 10, will be filled with plenty, and your vats will overflow with new wine. So in other words, if you tithe, God's going to bless you. If you tithe, your barns are going to be filled, and your wine vats are just overflowing. If you tithe, God will make you wealthy. Does that particular theology sell? You bet it does. The prosperity gospel is one of the hottest tickets anywhere in the world. There are churches especially in Africa, where people who get up and preach this, that, oh, if you tithe, if you do X, Y, and Z for God, God will make you rich, they will draw 50,000 people in the middle of nowhere to a worship service. And all across America. A lot of the TV preachers, if you support this ministry, God will bless you. And you'll be rich, and all of your problems will be solved. Of course, the thing is, as you read the Bible and you listen to what Jesus says, if you follow him, your problems are going to get worse, probably, not better. So Proverbs 3, honor the Lord with your wealth, and from the first of your produce, so your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will overflow with new wine. So Satan is making the argument that Job, and maybe all people in general, worship God purely out of selfish motives, that love and a spiritual covenant have absolutely nothing to do with it at all. In fact, Satan gets up and says, take it all away, Lord. Take it all away. And that same Job who is so upright and blameless will curse you to your face. Will curse you to your face. That's right there in verse 11. Ooh. Satan is suggesting all of this, of course, because profit and power were always his motives, right? Why does Satan think this of Job? Because that's who he is. Isn't it interesting that when he lost all that he had, cursing God was his first response? And isn't it more interesting that even angels will project themselves on others? Because I am this way and I know that I'm right. Surely you must be this way too. I was at the grocery store the other day, and there were three ladies talking, and they were kind of blocking the aisle. And so I was trying to slowly navigate around them without playing bumper cars with their buggies. And one of them said, well, I just told him right up. I didn't want his ideology forced on me. And I'm thinking, oh, this is fun. Should I? No, I'm just going to go get my Oreos and go home. But I'm thinking, well, you know why he's trying to force his ideology on you, right?
You should have. You would have had so much fun.
I would have. I know. But just looking at my watch, I didn't have time. And, but I wanted to say, you know why he's forcing his ideology on you, right? Because he's right and you're all wrong. And you need to get on his program. Yeah, and of course I know nothing about nothing. I have no idea what side of the coin they're talking about or anything else. But that's the way we are. That's how Satan is. He's projecting his own self onto Job. Take away everything he has and he will curse you to your face. Because that's how Satan is. That's how he was. When he lost everything, that's what he did. And so the die is cast. But God is extremely confident in Job's faithfulness. And so in verse 12, the Lord, and you can almost feel the Lord smiling. The Lord says to Satan, behold, all that he has is in your power, in your hands. Only do not put forth your hand on him. So Satan departed from the presence of the Lord. God is extremely confident in Job's faithfulness. And he's seeking to really undercut Satan, rebuke his mercenary attitude by putting Job and all that he possesses in Satan's hands, with the caveat that Satan cannot lay a finger on Job himself. You can't hurt him, you can't kill him. But God seeks to prove that it is the relationship, that love relationship alone, not the residual blessings that come with it, that make worship what it is. Um, I had somebody who was really, really going through a very difficult time. And I asked them how they were doing. And they said, well, I'm holding up okay. And I know that God's with me, but sometimes I wish He didn't think so much of me that He had let me undergo all of this. I understood that. God has faith in you. God trusts you. God knows you can cope with it. There are some people who don't flinch at that. And there's just something about their heart. There's that pitcher that wants to be on the mound in the bottom of the ninth with the bases loaded and nobody out. There's that guy. I was listening in the car driving back from my parents' house in Gainesville back to Atlanta one time, and it was my favorite season of the year, football season. And on the radio, this guy's got a call-in thing. He says, "What's the most amazing moment in football you ever saw?" And a couple of people called in. They had their opinions, but there was one that I just had to call in with. So I'm on hold for like 30 minutes. But I'm driving on I-75 from Gainesville to Atlanta. I got plenty of time. That's not my problem. So I finally get on, and I said, do you remember a place kicker that the Miami Dolphins had once upon a time? He was from Germany. His name was Uwe von Schamann. A place kicker for the Dolphins named Uwe von Schamann. Well, he played college football at Oklahoma. What a fish out of water he had to be. A German kid who had only played soccer all of his life in Norman, Oklahoma, learning how to kick in American football. And Oklahoma goes up to Ohio State, John, sorry. And the score is tied at the end of the game, or is maybe Ohio State's up by 1, and Oklahoma's got the ball. And what do? And it would be about a 55, 60-yard kick. And the coach Barry Switzer looks at von Schamann and says, son, get out there and win the game for us. So the German kid hops up, grabs the football, grabs the tee, heads out to the field, and 100,000 Ohio State fans are chanting, block that kick. And they call timeout to freeze him. Okay, so he doesn't really quite understand, I don't think, everything that's going on. So as 100,000 Ohio State fans are chanting, block that kick, he's in the middle of the field where the O is going, block that kick. He's cheering with them for the kick to be blocked. And then he gets up there and hits the 55-yard field goal, wins the game for Oklahoma. And I thought, that might be the greatest football moment I've ever seen. Whether he realized what he was doing at the time or not, it was just priceless. It does kind of sound German, yeah. That's right. Yeah, you say it in your guttural there. That it does sound like it. There are those people who just live for those moments, but they do it out of their own self-confidence. What I gave you, and what I didn't say for myself, is the piece that's stapled there on the back of your sheet. There's a strength that comes from knowing that your Nolan Ryan and your 100-mile-an-hour fastball is going to win the game at the 9th inning. And there's a strength in knowing that you're Uwe von Schamann and you can hit that 55-yard field goal even if 100,000 people are cheering against you. But if you are starving and hungry and tired and you don't know what's tomorrow's going to bring, and you can still have confidence not in yourself but in God, that changes everything. And so this is a poem that's the Allies found on a wall in a cellar of the Cologne concentration camp in Germany at the end of the war. I believe in the sun, even when it is not shining. And I believe in love, even when there's no one there. And I believe in God, even when he is silent. I believe through any trial there is always a way. But sometimes in this suffering and hopeless despair, my heart cries for shelter, to know someone's there. But a voice rises within me saying, hold on, my child. I'll give you strength. I'll give you hope. Just stay a little while. So I believe in the sun, even when it is not shining. And I believe in love, even when no one's there. But I believe in God, even when he is silent. I believe through any trial, there is always a way. May there someday be sunshine. May there someday be happiness. May there someday be love. May there someday be peace. That person is not worshiping because they're going to get rich. That person has been living with death and pain and suffering for a while all around them. That person is worshiping because I believe in God even when he's silent. And someday there will be sunshine and hope and peace, and that's okay. Let's pray. Father, thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for opening your word to us. Lord, nobody skates through life for free. Kings and queens die. The rich, the powerful. We think of the most wealthy man in the world once upon a time, Howard Hughes, and how he died a miserable death. It's how it is so often. All the money in the world, all the influence, all the power in the world can't save you. Pain and suffering comes to us all. So what will our response be? When we have been on top of the world and we lose it all, will we still worship you? Will we still praise you? Or will we curse you to your face? That's what Satan did. That's what he believes. And he pushes so often to see what our faith is really made of. Are we just mercenary like he is? In it for the money, the wealth, the blessings? Or are we made of something different? Is that love relationship with you really the most important thing to us? If the heavens fall, will we still praise you? That's the question. So be with us, Father, as we go with Job on this journey where he loses everything, where even his friends betray him. And we find a little bit of ourselves in there. We remember the voice of one hiding in a cellar, concentration camp, who still believed even when you were silent.